Well, I already know how you're doing today, so that's not really an earnest question anymore. But it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, as always.
Thank you for making time to have these conversations.
Of course.
Appreciate it. This is a very rewarding conversation for me, very rewarding experience for me. I do believe that we all have a subconscious story that we're telling ourselves about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And because it's subconscious, it's also silent. It's not something that we're articulating. It's like, outside of taking a stance on, I'm the type of man that so I'm enjoying this conversation and what I'm learning about myself and the people that I'm speaking to. Right. So you're an incredibly dynamic person to speak to.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So I'll tell you, when the idea of this premise came about by way of a friend of mine, Rashawn. We were having a podcast episode taping, and he started to tell me a story about his childhood and how it affected his sense of identity. Okay. And it really was eye-opening and ear-opening for me. And I remember for myself, like certain ideas and beliefs and aspects of my self-esteem that I developed as a child and how they kind of built my identity. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, for example, my father nicknamed me Goodness as a toddler, right?
That's so cute.
It is. It's more country than it is cute, but it's both.
It's both.
Yeah, and I'm proud of it, right? Mm-hmm. But it instilled in me the idea that I was a good person, right? And so then it instilled in me a sense of obligation to that identity. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm not a good person, I would eventually have to show that to my dad.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And he believes I'm a good person, So that's kind of how it started to formulate in my own mind of like, who am I to me?
Sure.
Sure. And as we grow and mature, we take on careers and we take on relationships and we have children and we adopt identities by way of these contexts and constructs.
Absolutely.
But if you remove them, are we that person still?
Good question. Right.
So like in your, just generally, like how do you view yourself? How do you describe yourself?
Well, I think going back to what you said, just kind of what was told to you as a child. My parents did a great job of fostering self-esteem. Mm-hmm. I was like a princess to daddy. Okay. You know what I mean? Mom is, I'm becoming or watching her, right? So seeing what a sharp, educated, woman looks like and looking at her as a mother now that I'm a mother, so like you get those experiences. And I think from the family that I came from, I grew up preacher's grandkids. So, it's like Black royalty, it's but I've that regal type of
dignity,
space, MVP, VIP, MVP too, but you know what I mean? So I think that's shaped a lot, just like, like my family culture, all of that. Yeah. And then I would say losing my dad at a younger age, I was 12 going on 13 when he passed away. But even like how important he was to community, he was a police officer, a dare teacher. So I mean, just how many people he was able to touch. So I think being someone who is the change or is the person who's helping others, that shaped me too. I always wanted to make a lot of money and help a lot of people. So it's like, so being able to have that type of focus. And my parents, my dad especially, he wanted me to be a doctor, from, little, he's buying me Ben Carson books. I mean, that didn't really age as well. But just always knowing that I was capable of bigger and better. One of the things he did for me before he passed, like he put me in private school, and it like my family, I think I have a really gorgeous family, but it was like, it wasn't about being cute or pretty. It was about being sharp, smart, So I grew up with that, not so much we're going to get things off of appearance and whatnot. So I kind of just took that to me. So I took that with me. So I think self-esteem, especially for women, it's such a crucial thing to really value yourself. And I've had multiple identities over different spaces of my life. But I think those core values, have traveled all throughout. And just knowing that you can, knowing that things are possible, dreams can come true. You can manifest the life that you want to see. It allows you to, I think, seamlessly continue to evolve. And, I've done like everything. I've been a pop star. I rapped before. I've been in movies. I've been on TV. One day I was like, I'm going to go to law school. Like, people are just like, huh? Like, if you knew me from my entertainment days, you're just like, how did we get there? But not realizing.
And I'm mind blown about the entertainment back history. I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah. So a lot of folks know me from that world. Or, like I said, private school, college. There's been so many different versions. And I've always had a day job. You know what I mean? So I had another career before even switching to this one. But like I said, I think the one thing about my identity is that, like, I can do anything. Barbie life. Barbie can be anything,
Yeah.
And I think that's what has kind of carried me through all of these different transitions. And,
That's so interesting. Like, I think about, for myself, often, I think about the fortune that I have comparative to some people that I know and many people that I don't know, of my self-esteem not being taken from me as a child.
It's crucial.
Yeah. And to, listening to you, it's like, it impresses upon me again, just how crucial it is to instill in children that you are capable of the climb.
Absolutely.
Like, you don't belong there without climbing, but you are capable of the climb.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest job as parents, we have, or even with working with youth in the community, things of that nature, is just to speak life into them. Speak positivity, optimism. I know with like my son, and I will also throw in there, I'm a Leo.
Okay.
So, if you know anything about that,
that's
it kind of makes it. And I was raised by, my mom's a Leo and my son is a Leo. And I even see kind of how, like, we're having one conversation, but generationally different, but we all kind of have the same thought pattern. I see with my son now, and he's like, well, I want to try sports now, or I want to do this now, and go for it. I don't force anything on him except for working hard, learning, growing. But in terms of his interests, I really want him to kind of find his own path, especially as a young man,
Right.
But he knows he can. Whatever he decides he wants to do, he can figure it out. He can work hard enough. He can, achieve it. So,
Right.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, super important. Super important. How does that inform your relationship? So there's like a few questions that I do tend to ask, but largely I'd like the conversation as fluid as possible. But to that point, how does it affect your relationship with ambition? Like, you mentioned that I want to make a lot of money, I want to help a lot of people, which is like, I call that like servant leadership, right? But servant leadership is not it's not shiny martyrdom. Like, there's ambition in there. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Like, what's your relationship with ambition?
So, like, we've all seen like those memes, like, the only person I'm competing with is myself. Like, it's me versus me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's see how far we can push it.
Yeah.
So being ambitious is something that, like I said, I don't know when I learned ambition. I just feel like I've always been someone who just likes to, just take it to the next level or level up. I think staying the same is extremely boring. Like, I don't knock anybody, but that's not for me.
Right.
So ambition is just like, we're only here for a limited time, and I think shaping wise, when my father passed away, he was only 41,
Wow.
or 42. So I'm 40, right? Yeah. And I'm like, if this was done in a couple of years, did I live a life? Or every morning, I'm like, is this, what I want to be doing? Is this? And I think that's also back to self-esteem, why people, I think, that are ambitious don't necessarily stay in difficult areas too long. It's like sometimes you have to go through something, but the goal is to get to the other side. And the ambition or the self-esteem is the thing in your head saying you can. No one has it easy. And some people don't like to work hard. But like I said, the idea that life is almost like a sport. Like, you don't necessarily get any trophy or prize, so to speak. But like, if you really like push it to its limits, you can really do some cool things and kind of leave that legacy. I think it's so cute when my son is just like, because of course your kids don't really know what is important, or especially like I always crack up when I think like Beyonce. Blue Ivy would probably be looking at Beyonce some days like, you know what I mean? But that's because that's your kid. But but I think it's so cute when he's just like, my mommy's a lawyer, and or whatever, even him wanting to make him proud of me, the same way I would want to make my parents or my family proud of me. So that's why I'm so ambitious. Like there's a why. I have my whys. And like I said, I just what else would I be doing with my time except for going hard? You know what I mean? And manifesting the life that I want. Like ultimately, I'd love to retire just to do philanthropic, with work and just travel, but in due time, so the ambition keeps me set on, what I want from my life ultimately. Because like I said, we are all getting older and, so yeah, but I don't have a problem with ambition. I have a problem with people who do things for the benefit of like, or achieve things in a not so cool way. Like I like the integrity behind my ambition, and I've seen it across the board. Not everybody wants to play fair, but as for me, I don't think there's anything unhealthy. I think it actually just is what my drive is.
Yeah, it's funny how that muscle can be developed, that muscle of integrity, in spite of how other people are playing the game. Like you can give yourself personal wins because you won by the rules that you play by. And
absolutely.
Not, the rules by the next person.
Cutting corners or backbiting, whatever. And, you can imagine in entertainment all the way through to law, you're watching people do it differently.
Absolutely.
I mean, I tell my clients almost every day, like, I'm trying to go to heaven. So, like I don't play around with people. I wouldn't want to be played around with. I do believe what goes around comes around, karma, whatever so I want to act as much as possible with integrity, especially as an attorney. Like and I do family law, right? So it's like you're dealing with people's lives,
Yes.
I like to manage expectations, but again, it's more so just like I said, it's about my moral compass and not wanting to compromise that.
You mentioned, seeing your mom as an educated woman, and I thought about my mom. Like my mom didn't finish college, but my dad left school in the 8th grade, right? And my mom's side of the family was like the educated side, and they were educators, and so the idea or the image of my mom was an educated woman, right? And my dad was a voracious reader, like as far as like
eating them books up.
But there is something to the idea and image of intellectually equipped, like how it shows up in how you listen, and how it shows up obviously in how you talk, and how you speak, how available and willing you are to ask questions, and and not feel pressure to know already.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And like there's, that's some of the things that I saw from my mom. Like my mom was incredibly intellectually humble and intellectually prolific.
That's dope.
So when you say, your mom was an educated woman, like what was that image to you growing up? Like what were you looking at?
Well, growing up, she did college. She was working, for like Merck. My family's from they're from Virginia, but settled in Rahway. My grandfather was called a pastor of church here.
Got you.
So raised with kind of like that Southern upbringing. Like my grandmother went to college, which is like rare. My grandfather, PhD. You know what I mean? So it's like that's the good Reverend Doctor. So it's very rare to have a family that's like
right.
But my great grandmother instilled in my great grandma, who instilled in my mother, who instilled in me. Like she had a business school. She's born way back when, right? So, and it was always to the woman, make sure you are able to have your own if you need to, or take care of yourself if you need to. And I think that's just, old school. Like just make sure that you're good too.
Yeah.
Especially as you fall into motherhood and, relationships, things like that. But she, she had like kind of a regular job. My dad was more the breadwinner as a police officer, then detective, then sergeant.
Yeah.
But she went back to get her master's while we were younger, So she actually was in the middle of her master's program when my father died.
Oh, wow.
And, again, you don't expect to be a widow at 36.
Right.
With 2 kids and mortgage and, and she was working and going to school, part-time. And it's literally, that story was in my personal statement for law school, because I saw her now a single mother, going to grad school, working full-time, and I was still in my private school. Like life didn't change with the exception of the absence of my father. She held it down. Like she was never the one, having to kind of just do it all by herself. So again, seeing her, I knew I could. Yeah. Even as a mom, even as somebody who had to work full-time, I knew it was possible because I saw her do it. Right. And it's so interesting because the conversation I was having earlier today where I had to speak was on like diversity and inclusion and how, I'm in a white male-dominated field still. Black people are still underrepresented. And it hasn't really been changing, but mentorship, what you see and who you know can really change and guide your journey. So my mother was my first mentor, in essence. Yep. And we just published our first article together. She's a social worker and I'm a lawyer, but I do a lot of DV work. So, and I mean, like, again, that was one of my goals is for our offices to be across the hall, and we're sending the same clients back and forth. But it's happening. We're sharing clients now. We are trying to, do something cool. And I say she's young. She's young. So she's still actively in her career too, which shows, and my grandfather, I mean, he worked until he was 87, like at pastoring a church, like 55 years of, pastoring a church. So like I said, it's with the examples that I've seen, there was no way for me not to, the black sheep of our family has 2 degrees. What I'm saying? It's like, there was nowhere to go with that one. And my son, he already knows 3 more years college. And he's like, yeah, well, I want to go. I want the experience. You know what I mean? He knows it's just part of kind of what, we do. Yeah. But again, I'm also like, he's in video tech class right now, learning how to edit and, all the different roles in a studio. I'm like, you can do anything. Just make sure that you're educated about it and, take it where you want it to go. Yeah. That's such
a, you said, this is what we do. And that's another thing that I think is so valuable for, young people that grow up in a household or in a family where there is a articulated thing we do or way we do it or what have you.
Value system or whatever that is,
And also like heritage. Yep. It gives a sense of heritage that like
absolutely.
There's a path laid in this. It's not just our preference. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's a path laid for you. So like if you do set out to do what we do, know that you have a support system of people who have done it with less, who had done it in a analog time period. Like you got a vicious army if you were
okay,
to set
gang,
about
gang.
truly,
Seriously,
truly, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much power in knowing that you come from something and that not something vague, to be able to like point to it.
No, absolutely. And I would say it's interesting because like my son's father, he's very ambitious. He's done very well for himself. But he's like the first, you know?
Yeah.
But he's now creating that
Absolutely.
for his children and you know, for our son. It's like now it's become a thing all the way around. And like you said, I think it's important to kind of have that legacy, you know, passing down that information or having those expectations, standards for yourself and your kids, your family.
Yeah. And it's also knowing that like the standard has been met. So like you can't tell us you can't.
You can't, right.
You don't get away with telling us you can't.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Because we all did. And we weren't.
And you shall too.
Yeah, and you shall.
And you shall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I think the difference as the generations have gone, you know, have continued to progress, more flexibility in the ways at which you can do certain things or the opportunities. You know, my grandfather's old school. So like it was, I mean, it's a hilarious joke now, but he was dead serious when I bought my first condo when I was like 23, 24. And he's like, well, why are you doing this? Who's going to want you now? Like, this is, where are you leaving any space for someone? So it was like very old school, you know, the girls, you're supposed to leave the house when you get married type of thing. But he even now, and it's just like, well, you know, you're my lawyer. Like he loves it. Yeah. But at first it's just like law school. What are you doing now? And, you know, like why? Like you already have a career. You already, you know, so, but now he just doesn't put anything past me. And he's just like, well, if she says she's going to do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you know.
But it's changed because again, I'm technically non-traditional in that way. But I still achieved exactly what he wanted for, you know, his grandkids and kids and stuff. So.
Yeah, for the lineage,
Yeah.
And the cloth that you come from.
Well, there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? You know what? So like that part I think has gotten more flexible. You know, times have changed.
Yeah, and it's so funny how like I believe that we're all eventually going to be on the wrong side of history, just by way of like what is of the now will go out of style.
I mean, well, and I think that's going back is why there's importance in still having some tradition, some moral compass standards, because, you know, I'll go back to your nickname, goodness. If you're trying to be good to others, you know, good to your family, I think that never goes out of style. And I would say, I think, you know I'm a lot more of an inclusive mentality. We need every type of person. I let people kind of mind their business, but I think some issues, you know, we should be trying to collectively solve and make things a better place. I mean, I think every generation has that. Like, I know I look at the kids, like my son's age now, and I'm like, what is all of this Riz and that? And I'm like, what is, like, you know, but I think every generation was looked at one point like that.
Absolutely.
And it's going to continue to.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm sure they were looking at our generation like, what are y'all talking about?
Why are y'all introducing words? We have a word already. We don't need
I look at our fashion choices and I shake my head often. Yeah. Like that early 2000s was rough.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the 90s also.
Well, the 90s too, technically, questionable. I mean, 80s. Yeah. You know, when you had just one, the monochromatic, but like bright and
neon.
Yeah. You know, swishy paint. You know, we had a lot of things going on. But so I think like that's always going to be part of it. Yeah. What the kids are doing, you know.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I think the goal now is just to make it. Yeah. That part, you know, I'm like we don't really want to go down the politics side, but like that part is more, people are trying to roll things back and dial things back, which is scary. So in terms of being on the wrong side of a history, that part I think maybe for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't believe this exclusively or absolutely, but generally speaking, I believe that there's been an effort to roll back history for all of
Often.
history,
Mhm,
and they've
mhm.
all failed.
Right. But, and again, I think that's why it's so important that people have some kind of moral compass and believe in the goodness of others and work hard to fight for people. Because yeah, you're correct. There are always gonna be attempts. But I know if no one is engaged to really battle those attempts, yeah, we can easily slide backwards, as long as people just stay engaged and educated, and you know what I mean. That's why a lot of my efforts now are speaking and getting out there, educating people. Like I'm working with the city of Newark, the Shani Baraka Center, doing domestic violence legal clinic out of the center because I was raised on the Bible, but it's like our people perish for a lack of knowledge, right?
Yes.
And yes, I get paid to tell people things, but I also have been given a gift where I can just give of my time, right? And say something that can change or save a life.
Yeah.
But it's important that we have advocates on all fronts. And that's what I mean by, I like to make money, but I also like to fight and advocate for those that are more vulnerable,
What made you choose like family law?
I fell into it. But I mean, and when I say fell into it, it was circumstance. So I was an evening student. The law clinics are typically available only to the full-time day students.
Okay.
So I ended up volunteering at Volunteer Lawyers for Justice, and it was with their divorce clinic. I was like, let's see what it's about, right? I originally was going to be in labor and employment type of attorney. It was so boring, and I was like, that's not for me.
Right.
But I literally fell in love with it, like working at the courthouse, working with real people, hearing the stories, and really being able to help. In family law, if you even talk to any of their attorneys, they'll be like, "Oof, you do what?"
Yeah.
But you really have to love it, and because it's challenging. You're dealing with a lot of people's emotions, but it's rewarding work.
Yeah.
And especially, I mean, I do a lot of case for fathers' rights. Seeing men with their kids is like, especially after not having my father. So it's like I've had a lot of grown men cry. You know what I mean? But for good things, and like that's important to me. And then, like I said, with victims of domestic violence, that work is important to me because again, you literally can be saving a life.
Absolutely.
And so that's that's how I ended up in family law. But I love it. I mean, it's like working in reality TV most days.
Right. I can imagine.
The stories. But I feel like this is what I was put here to do, at least at this juncture, because who knows what God has in store for me next, know?
Another album might be coming out.
You never know. Might drop that adult contemporary.
Yes.
That Sade version, Yeah. You never know.
Yeah.
So keeping it open.
Let me ask you this. I've developed this routine. I developed a gratitude and goal ritual.
I've seen it on the gram.
And it's incredibly regenerative. Like it immediately pours in as I'm expressing out, right? And it also makes me much more acutely aware of how many things I am filled with and surrounded by to be grateful for, right? And I'm curious about your relationship and practice of gratitude.
Again, I'm raised a church girl, pretty much, so, thankfulness is like the foundation of my personal walk with God, right? I don't have to have any of it, right? I don't have to, I consider myself extremely blessed and highly favored. And so thanking God for the blessings, when you're raised on that from, as a youth,
As a youth,
it does become, it's like ingrained, you know, like I crack up sometimes at myself. I'll be like, thank you, Jesus, for the Chick-fil-A line not being too long today. Because you know, even this, thank God he said I can come a little early. I can get home a little early, you know? So, I mean, even the simplest things, if you getting that parking space right in front of the building, you know what I'm saying? When you are constantly just like, you know, thankful for that, it just keeps compounding. And you're like opening yourself up. And honestly, it's a way that I relieve stress also, because I'm only stressed because I'm so blessed, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? So I can even thank God for my problems. Because, you know what I mean? Someone would be praying for my problems. You know what I'm saying? So you definitely have to make it a lifestyle, and stay focused, because like very few things are actually, you know, the devil is busy types of things, you know, very few. You know, because, you know, sometimes like that traffic or that long line or that whatever was saving you from some other unseen. Don't get me to preaching in here now. No, but it's just super important. And, you know, literally just waking up and being thankful for your eyes opening and knowing that there's something for you to set out and do today. And you never know who's going to be in that path, or even thankful for the opportunity. You know?
And, you know, some of this I'm sure has to do with just my familiarity and comfort zone and the preferences from them. But I often think, like, I'm grateful that I get to be me.
Amen.
I really like
self-esteem, though. You know, that's
truly,
you know, that's absolutely.
But like there's, and to not have the internal conflict that I have seen other people have, where I don't have an issue where I'm not okay being me, like alone or in company.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And that's not something everybody can say. So I'm really, really grateful for that. I'm really grateful for the ability that I have to do a thing in earnest, because I live in earnest. You know what I mean? So like my efforts, my ventures, my attempts, my creativity, they're not coming from a place of, there's nothing veiled. There's nothing that's like a distraction from some other thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so I get to actually enjoy it more. You know, because I don't have an ulterior motive. I don't have this side pot bubbling.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's I get to really enjoy the thing, because I really mean to be this person and do this thing. You know?
It's authentic.
Yeah. Thank you for summing up my soliloquy in one word.
That's why they pay me the big bucks, okay? You know?
Yes, indeed.
That's what I do.
As they should. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So over time, like I remember as a preteen and teenager, for the most part, I was very short. And just by way of the hierarchy of height, that has a impact on my self-esteem, right?
Sure.
And then like junior year in high school, I had my growth spurt, right? And I don't consider myself tall now. I just don't consider myself short.
Taller than me, so I mean, I'm 4'11" ¾ So
that is amazing.
So yeah, but
wow,
I have a Napoleon complex.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, absolutely. I get it. Like it's because
I feel like brawling. Yeah,
but yeah.
I feel like it's just like an aura.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, I definitely have a Napoleon complex.
Yeah, but it's interesting to me how those type of things, like the things that, and you know, this is evident in race and gender, in so many, you know, aspects of life, where something that you don't have control over, you can still either be ridiculed for or adored for, but in some way, you know, be judged.
Absolutely.
And like you have no input on this thing.
I mean, skin color.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. So like, it's so interesting to me to know that and to think back on going through life where if I remained short, I would feel differently about myself today.
Possibly.
Or
well, it's how much people tie it to male
absolutely.
ego. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that's like you said, it's something that's out of your control. But there's a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even say stereotype. I don't know what you call it. Like but it's something
stigma,
attached. Like it's something. It can be a stigma attached to certain aspects of, like you said, of things that are out of your control.
Right.
I mean, racism. You know what I mean? But things like height, things like head size. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I have a 5 head. I'd be trying to,
It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah,
I've seen your forehead quite a lot. That's not something I've ever thought.
But again, it's something that like maybe you only notice, or maybe you know what I mean? So, but it's,
right.
One eye is bigger than the other. Like, you know what I mean? Like no one is.
Yeah.
Now everyone's gonna be looking in the.
Yeah.
Oh, she right. She
right.
right.
But you look in the mirror every day. So
see myself every day.
Yeah.
But yeah. So certain stigmas for sure, and even with that, like. Remember the song? I wish I was a little bit taller.
Yes,
I wish I was
about.
I
was short at the time.
Okay, yes. But yeah, I mean, again, I think that's why it's so important to have that foundation. And you said you had it laid for you for self-esteem because it had your physical appearance has nothing to do with you. Right. That's you and your parents. Yeah. I mean, your parents' genes. Like that's the only person's responsible. But you can teach anybody to love themselves or foster that environment where they love themselves regardless of the two mismatched eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also impressed on me that there are other aspects, like that life is evolutionary and it's passing through time. You know what I mean? So like what I was, I won't always be. What I am, I won't always be. And as far as the aspects that I do have control over, to your point, I can shoot for the moon. Like I can
knock it
go
out
wild.
Go ham. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so like that's where my attention and interest is. It's like
that's the better fight.
Yeah.
Like you.
That's a better fight.
That's the better fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when they say pick and choose your battles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like we ain't growing no more.
No.
We can slim. Make sure we don't spread too much. But that's about as far as that goes. And
that was the other thing. I used to be really skinny. I used to want to have more meat on my bones. And so many of these things is like, man, that ain't the fight.
Well, that's like I was saying to you before. My parents didn't raise me like, okay, you're attractive, so X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I didn't know what I look. I just this is my family. This is what what I look like. There was nothing tied to appearance.
Okay.
And I think that's also important, like I said, with women especially, because none of us are going to look this way forever. Forever, right?
Right.
When the Bible said, beauty is fleeting. So you have to have that like substance. Yeah. And the substance is the only thing that you can control.
Right. For
sure.
To that point, when and how did you realize that you are attractive?
You know what it is? It was more, I think, like when you're a teenager or in school and people have like little crushes on you. You're just like, okay.
Okay, yeah.
But I just kind of, like I'm a Leo, tell me I'm pretty every day. I would love it. But it was not something, like I said, that was, I was in the smart classes and the private schools and, so it wasn't really like, I didn't have a boyfriend until like college. You know what I mean? It was just kind of, well, a real boyfriend. But like, it was just kind of a, all right, she's cute. And I was super skinny too. So all the other girls had the bodies and stuff, So it wasn't until like late, not even college, it was a little scrawny period too.
It's like there is such a benefit to being a late bloomer and the characteristics and aspects of your personality that you have as a late bloomer. It's like it's
night and day. And it's crazy because, like I said, none of us are gonna look like this eventually. If we're blessed enough to live long enough to get old, you
know?
Yes. And when it fades.
Yeah, when it fades, it's not a pretty downward slope.
But if there's substance there, that doesn't necessarily fade.
Right.
It can decline if you get too old. But again, the substance is what you're left with. Once it all. And I mean, it's a blessing to get older. I mean, I was super excited to turn 40.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
also, like, 40 is not what 40 was in the 80s.
It absolutely isn't.
At all.
40 was basically like retirement.
Yeah.
Well,
and maybe the kids are saying the same thing right now, and we're just saying it's different.
No. Visually, it's night and day. Do you ever look at a picture of Martin Luther King and be like, was he just born
with a mustache?
Old? Like older?
Right.
Like you couldn't tell me he looks like what a 40-year-old looks.
Yes, indeed.
Like, but he wasn't even he didn't even.
He wasn't even 30.
But he wasn't even yeah. But he's like Samuel L. Jackson. Like, were you ever a baby, sir?
Right.
Like, I need to see pictures.
Right. Yeah.
But I just think generally aesthetically, it's getting younger and younger. Because I look at college students now and I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure you're old enough to be here?
Right. Right. Teachers.
Like, and I get it too, because when I go into court, they're like, okay, so where's your baby daddy? Is he here? I'm like, no, I'm the lawyer. Yeah. I'm a grown up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just think generally everybody is just aging backwards to a certain degree, generationally. Like people are looking younger.
Just better older. Yeah.
But I mean, we have so many different lifestyle changes.
For sure.
Way we eat, working out, all of the products,
Yeah.
Like you're not even doing anything on purpose, but it's just different quality of life.
For sure. Yeah. And it's, I think about it sometimes how like canned goods are the product of being in wartime.
Okay.
Like that's not
what you do.
No.
For your life. Like eat something that was alive a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so many lifestyle changes are like, man, the people in our, parents or grandparents' generations, certain things were introduced, and it's just like, because at that time period, such and such was going on, and that had an adverse effect.
Absolutely.
Like, and particularly as it relates to food, the conveniencing of food. Like the more and more food is made convenient, the worse it is for you.
We eat trash.
And
the only way to avoid it is to literally like grow your own, raise your own. I mean, we have the Whole Foods but even still, you're like, but where did it come from?
Right.
And that's one of the, Cory Booker was just talking about that. It's one of his major focuses. Like, we need more farmers. We need more, and I live in South Jersey, which is rural New Jersey. It's Alabama, New Jersey. That's what I call it. And I'm like, I mean, even though I probably wouldn't have a farm, I'd have a vineyard. but still, the idea that you can be, that's how my family is in Virginia. They were on a reservation. They were growing their greens. They were killing their chicken.
Yes.
They were, you know what I mean? And it's a different it's night and day.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember seeing a documentary by this guy. I can't remember the guy's name, but the documentary was called Soul Food. And it was about how the African American diet is
scraps
rooted in slave rations.
Scraps.
And along with that, there is the lifestyle, the incredible amount of manual labor that was being done at the time, compared to the sedentary lifestyle that we lead today. It's like
night and day.
You busting down, those
eggs
and bacon and home fries and toast and
you were not
and then sitting down all day. That is not the same.
It's not going to cut it, baby.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, obesity crisis in our communities. There's just so much. There's so much going on with that. But again, there's a lot more information, so people, that's why, like, they call certain places food deserts. Yep. Yeah, because it's like just the access isn't there.
Yep.
or the means, like, you know, and that's the tough part.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the high fructose corn syrup is there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man.
Well, you know, I growing up with grandparents with diabetes, you know, the sugar.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? We always were just like, you got to make better choices because you know your family's already set up for this. Can't play.
Right.
Can't play.
Right.
Yeah.
I got 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
So, how do you talked about, like, you know, growing up with your grandparents, and I grew up, my grandfather lived in the house with us for a little while. He had diabetes, had both legs amputated.
Oof.
But the experience of living as a young person with an elderly person was significant for me.
Sure.
Like, one, it was I got to see my parents look up to somebody.
Right. See them being parents,
like, and be
still,
reverent of someone.
Yeah.
Right. And my grandfather was confined to a wheelchair. Like, he was being, like, we were caretaking. You know what I mean? But because of what my grandfather did in the raising of his family, he still demanded that reverence and that dignity and respect, and received it. And I got to see my father. So my father left Alabama when he was young. Like I said, he was in the 8th grade when they moved north with his mom, him, and his sister. And so my father got to show me the reverence in a way that it was like, but also teaching me the reverence. You know what I mean? Like, teaching me how to be affectionate with my grandfather, how to show him proper respect. And what I realized later on was like, oh, my father got to be a son in a fractional manner, and not necessarily that my father and grandfather, because it's my mother's father that lived with us. So it wasn't necessarily that they had a father-son relationship, but he knew the value of that man. You know what I mean? And he was able to teach that to me, like, you know, how to revere that man, how to be affectionate with that man, how to place myself in a way that man, that my grandfather could grandfather me. You know what I mean? And so I've always had such a reverence for older people. You know what I mean? What's your experience and perspective around that?
So, my mom is the oldest girl. So my grandparents, they had 4 kids, 2 sets, a boy and a girl and a boy. But there's 12 years in between my mom and her next sibling. Okay. So my mom basically was raising me almost with her younger brothers. It's like, so my aunt and uncle are 10 and 8 years older than me. Like, I grew up with them as if, like, more like older siblings than. And then at one point, we all were in the same house. Like, we were waiting for our house to be built when I was little. So I ended up going to school in Rahway, like 1st through 3rd grade. And then we moved to Piscataway. But all of us, my father, mother, brother, then my uncle and aunt, the younger ones, my grandparents, like, it was like, those were the days that we're all so close still, you know. My grandmother was my first school. You know what I mean? Like, so we went to pre-K and stuff eventually, but it was grandma's school first. So having that relationship, I was the first grandchild, you know, can't tell me nothing. So just having that relationship with both of my grandparents, and my grandmother passed away the year I found out I got into law school. But my grandfather's here. He's going to be 89 this year, and he's still driving. I mean, but he's still, you know, active and moving around. But it's, you know, having that closeness. that's our core group. I mean, we do every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every, you know, just over each other's houses, you know, just hanging out. Like I enjoy my family. And now like my uncles, his wife and his kids, growing up with my son and my aunt, her girls are my new besties because they're finally of age. So I can take them out, you know. So we're just a very close family. So I think family in general, like you said, learning to respect the generations and everything else is just so key because you're learning so many things, you know, dynamics, you know, politics, even like in the family. It's a lot, but it's so special. So special. And yeah, like, you know, very rarely do you say that, like my son has a relationship with his great grandfather. He doesn't have any grandfathers, but he has his great grandfather. Like my father passed away, his father's dad passed away too, but him having pop-up, you know, that's so many generations, and we literally just be kicking it. Like that's dope, you know. So I do love that.
And so I want to ask you about your relationship with death.
Okay.
Like my mom died last year. My dad died in 2009.
Okay.
But before my dad died, like I had one mentor of mine that died before my dad died. But for the longest period in my life, like I wasn't confronted with death of a close loved
major
one.
way,
Right. And now I find myself thinking so much about the fortune that I had in the relationship with these folks and in
that time.
And even in their death, like it recontextualizes my appreciation for those relationships and for the things that I learned and even for the challenges by way of the relationships, right? Like the challenges prepare me in ways that I couldn't have foreseen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I had an estranged relationship with my mom for over 10 years.
Wow.
But when my mom died, I wasn't suddenly bludgeoned with grieving because I had begun grieving my mom
already in the estrangement.
You know what I mean? So, and then my dad my dad had health issues, and my dad had been rushed to the hospital maybe a half a dozen times before he passed away. At a certain point, it felt like relief. You know what I mean? That because even the rushing to and from is tiring.
It can be,
exhausting. Mentally, physically, emotionally.
Sure.
So, your relationship with death, how would you describe it? Including your own.
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly, my father passed away when I was young. That was a pivotal, thing.
Yes.
Okay. And it forever changed me. Right. I'm a very much when it's your time, it's your time.
Yeah.
We're not meant to be here forever.
Right.
We're here for whatever purpose, and we too shall turn to dust.
Yes,
So I think having such a big, death so early. I'm not going to use the word jaded, but I'm going to say like I grew up with it's almost like, not that I lost my innocence, but it's like, you grew up with more of a like, this is real, my head has never really been in the clouds,
right.
It was very grounding. But it's amazing that it had to happen for me to become who I am.
Exactly this, yeah.
Exactly this way.
Yeah.
And the people that I've met along my path, like my best friend and I mean, you met Kristen, clearly. That is like my soulmate. But in college, I mean, I think we told you, she didn't even like me.
Yeah.
But it's like, when when we finally did hang out,
Mm-hmm.
the first big thing that happened in our friendship relationship was her father died.
Mm.
And it was the way that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I had this experience.
Yep.
And it made us like,
Yep.
it solidified, you know, it
Yeah.
solidified it.
Yeah.
Not that I wanted my dad to die so I could have a best friend, but
Right.
you know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
Like, but you never know how you need to show up for
Mhm.
people or what you're supposed to do and how this
Mhm.
taught you something
Yep.
that you're going to need,
Yep.
you know, in the future. And you never stop grieving,
Right.
but it just looks different
Mhm.
in different stages.
Mhm.
Like I've now been alive longer without my dad than with
Mhm.
my dad.
Yeah.
But I needed that grounding relationship with the self-esteem and
Yep.
what I meant to him. And I
Yep.
needed that to shape me also. But that was like, all right, well, that's that. And my mom is remarried now. She's kind of still a newlywed, but she's married to a judge who was someone who, his kids didn't go to law school.
Mhm.
I did.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Oh yeah.
that was mentorship. Like he
Yeah.
was like, no, you coming here with me.
Yeah.
We're doing this. You're joining
Mhm.
this, you know. So the way that he's fathered
Mhm.
me,
Mhm.
especially in this journey, which is more like his
Yeah.
journey. His kids went to school for social work. That's what my mom does. It was like
Right.
switched, you know. But
Okay.
and they've known each other since high school. So like you just don't
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
where life has to take you. He's a widow, she's a widower.
Mhm.
For it just to come back full
Yep.
circle. So I just, with death, with life,
Mhm.
it's for whatever reason, once that is served, we move on.
Mhm.
I used to be deathly afraid of
Mhm.
dying. But not because I'm afraid of death. Leaving my son, because I
Yeah.
knew what that pain
Yeah.
was. So I try to be like a lot more responsible these
Mhm.
days. But you know, but it's like important, you
Yeah.
know, that I'm here for him for as long as
Yeah.
he needs me. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's really what changed about
Yeah.
like my own
Mhm.
mortality. Like that's why you buy the insurance. That's why you
Right.
get your stuff set up,
Right.
you know, because that's the only thing that I would fear
Yeah.
about it
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
like
Right.
how everybody's gonna be so sad. But I won't be thinking about it. You know what I mean? I'll
Right.
be fine.
Right.
So, you know, so that's, but it's a part of life.
Yeah. Truly.
We are all actively dying
Actively. Every day.
every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Step closer,
Yeah.
you know, not to be morbid, but it's true.
But it's not a what's the word? This is a terrible time to lose a word. But it's like it's not a possibility.
It's a guarantee.
It's a guarantee.
It is a guarantee. No one's getting bit by a vampire.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like it's a guarantee. And I think I actively I talk with my son,
Mhm.
you know, about it just because, again, not that my father had an aneurysm on Father's Day.
Mm.
Okay. And I was complaining because I didn't want to do my church part in the
right.
thing. Like, he's not even coming. He got to work.
Right.
And and then
Yeah.
none of us were at the play.
Right,
You know what
right.
I mean? But it's more about like not taking things,
Mhm.
people, anything for granted. Literally enjoying your moments,
Yeah.
make the memories, do the silly stuff.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
one year, my little cousin, who was younger than my son,
Mhm.
was having a birthday party. His birthday fell on a Sunday. They had a water slide, and you know, and we were out there sliding.
Yeah.
The adults,
The
okay,
adults.
like let's go down in my, you know.
Yeah.
And we stayed up late just laughing,
Mhm.
and I was like, well, you don't have to go to school tomorrow. You know
Right.
what I mean? But like, that's a core memory.
Yes.
And they still talk about how fun that was, all the cousins and everybody together. So one day is not gonna,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's a 103% GPA.
Yeah,
Like he's
yeah,
an
yeah.
A++.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he'll be fine.
Yeah.
But moments like that,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
so that's the lesson.
Mhm.
Because we know we're not going to be
Mhm.
here forever.
Yeah. Live now.
Live.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah.
I've been in a different state every
Mhm.
weekend this month.
Mhm.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Live.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man. I
No
appreciate you coming
problem.
here.
No
Yeah.
problem. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And you're a busy person, so I'm
No,
glad
I
you
was
had
like, let
time.
me make sure it's in my route.
Yeah.
Make sure it's in
I'm
my
glad
route.
to have been in the route.
Yep.
Yeah.